Hello and welcome to the nicest episode of Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things we have ever recorded. This is episode 69. Sam, how are you?
I'm great. What's so special about
You know
69?
the joke. You see the number 69 and people go, nice. So it's the nicest episode.
Oh, nice.
We are going to talk about a game today, Sam, that came out quite a while ago now, but I had to wait a pretty sizable amount of time to end up being able to play this game. And can I just say I am hooked. I'm addicted. I play this game when I get home from work every day. I try to set aside at least one day of my weekend to put in a couple hours. That is Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh boy, Baldur's Gate 3.
It is a very exciting game. Have you ever played Baldur's Gate 2? Or 1 for that matter?
So no, I have not. Did you play these growing up?
I did not either.
Okay. Did you play any of the, I guess, late 90s, early 2000s D&D video games?
No, I was into the Star Wars, Lord of the Rings video games. I didn't really play any of the D&D games.
Okay.
But I knew since I've been playing D&D for quite a while now, when this game was coming out and it was announced, there was a huge following and a lot of people were really excited about it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I finally got a chance to get my hands on that controller, it hits every... I feel like I don't even need to play D&D anymore with people, because to me, Baldur's Gate 3 is such a good adaptation of the game. You roll dice, your attacks can miss, all of the magical spells and effects that you can use. To me, I'm pretty confident that I could get rid of D&D altogether and just play Baldur's Gate 3 over and over again.
That's a very bold statement.
I know, and it's not true. But I do feel very strongly that it is an amazing, amazing game.
Yeah, they did a great job. And I should say, I played it not exactly when it came out, but shortly after it came out. I started playing it on PC, and I'd never played Baldur's Gate 1 or Baldur's Gate 2. I did play Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance, which was a PlayStation game that was okay. And then I played the Neverwinter Nights. I played Neverwinter Nights 2 all the way through, plus the expansion. And I dabbled a little bit in Neverwinter Nights, the first one, which was, significantly earlier than Baldur's Gate. Than Neverwinter Nights 2. But I had a little bit of that D&D PC gaming or PlayStation gaming. I think the biggest thing for me, and this is also my experience with Baldur's Gate 3, is that as great as an adaptation is and as fun as the game is, I don't want to say a lot of the fun for me of D&D is doing your own storytelling. And that's next to even the best, most advanced video game, there's going to be limits. Like the map is the map. And the map can be gigantic, but you can't go beyond the kind of artificial borders of the map that you have.
But we're all pushed back with you on that.
All right.
I have created 3 different characters. Mm-hmm. My first character, I haven't finished the game. I'm in Act 3. And we're going to avoid spoilers as much as we can. But I'm in Act 3. And I decided, I'm having fun with this character. It's a halfling wizard. I wanted to be able to see what all the different spell casting was like in Baldur's Gate. But I hit a point where I was like, I feel like I have an understanding of what my limitations are. Was a wizard, I want to switch it up. And I don't want to do like one of the pre-created characters. Like you could play as Asterion, you could play as one of the other characters in your party because you can switch around.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go outside the box, create a tiefling bard. I created what was it? I think it was like a human barbarian. I was feeling pretty lame with that one. But
I'll put a flag in lame and come back to it, but keep going.
Okay. But the game, even though you have the limitations of where you can go, my playthrough the second time, especially with the Tiefling Bard, was so different. Like my interactions with the same characters from my first playthrough versus the way I was interacting with them the second time
Mm-hmm.
was night and day. And I feel like I was getting a different story. And that's the cool thing about Baldur's Gate 3 is that there's so many different ways to play the game, so many different ways to interact with characters and NPCs that your gameplay experience is going to be so individualized for you as the player. And I think that's, to me, the greatest accomplishment of the game is that A, it's fun, and B, you still get that feel of choose your own story,
Mm-hmm.
where based on your interactions with other characters and other players, it's going to change. So I love it.
Yeah.
What
No,
about you,
it's
Derek? Give me an example of Sam's character. What did you
oh, so
create the
going.
first
This
time?
is this is me going back to being lame.
Yeah.
My character's name was Samuel, and
Are
he was
you
a
fucking kidding me?
no, I'm not. And
Oh my God.
it was a redheaded male human paladin, lawful good. The most like eh, the I recognize the fact that that's very lame, but actually role playing lawful good in a game like Baldur's Gate is a hard thing to do because of the huge variety of choices that you have and the things
Mhm.
that you like. It would be easier to do XYZ at certain points in the game, and you would want to just there's certain people that it'd be just easier to kill, or certain creatures that'd be easier to kill, or steal this or steal that, but you can't do. But if you're role playing the character, you can't do that. I get it. Like that was hard. So then I was like, okay, well, I got to do something else. So the second character I created was a deep gnome necromancer wizard,
Mm.
and I chose the Dark Urge, which is a special character background. But his name was Samaster, which I know is lame because it's just my name with another word added to it. But it's also the name of a real character in the Forgotten Realms canon who was I think he was the founder of the Cult of the Dragon. Anyway,
Okay.
so yeah, I'm pretty boring when it comes, especially with the first one. But it's like, isn't that kind of the point? You get to be yourself in a fantasy setting.
Yeah,
Um,
I guess.
yeah.
Oh
Anyway,
man,
but
that's funny. But
the
I will say the one thing about paladins,
mhm,
I don't like. I wish they would. And again, the game is already so massive that the amount of customization that real D&D players would want just kind of isn't there.
mhm,
Like when you choose paladin, you don't get to pick your deity that you
that's
serve.
true. Yeah, yeah.
So you're just a generic paladin or holy warrior. So I wish those aspects would have been included because when you play the game, a couple characters like there's a warlock that you see their patron periodically throughout the game. So I thought it would be cool, like if you're a paladin and you chose a certain deity, maybe you ran into or
Hmm.
servants of that deity throughout the game. But I realize that that would make the game
Much more
it wouldn't have come
complicated.
out in 2023. It'd be coming out in like 2027
Yeah.
if they were going to go that route. So that I understand, but I
The
love
other
how
thing,
customizable it is.
the other thing that, and I acknowledge that this is just it's almost inevitable for any sort of video game, but it also happens a lot, I think, in D&D campaigns, is your character has to have amnesia, right? There has to
Mhm.
be some sort of, you have to explain how a mature adult who has significant capabilities just appeared in the world, and you as the player know nothing about yourself, right? Like, and that to me can get a little like some of the fun of D&D in my mind is figuring out why did you become that like zero level thing. You go from just being a regular kid on a farm to becoming an adventurer. You can kind of have that in video games, but it always just seems a little bit far fetched to a certain
Mhm.
extent. And I get it. Like it's a fantasy game. You have dimension hopping mind flayers, and you have devils from the nine hells and whatever else that are popping around to see you. But it's oh so convenient that literally everybody in your party doesn't know how they got there, or doesn't know
Mhm.
what's going on. It's one of those things that you deal with it. It grates a little bit, but you deal with it.
What's the most D&D thing that's happened in your game. And I'll give you an example of mine first. It gives you
Okay.
time to think and stew
Okay.
on it. This is one we've talked about. There's a character that you fight in the Shadowfell. Or at least this is where I fought this character in the Shadowfell. So I'm there and I saved it right before the battle commenced. And I probably tried and died 20 times
Hmm.
to beat this character. And I finally had kind of given up. I was like, you know what? I might have to adjust the difficulty of the game just so I can get through this one part and then I'll put it back to where I was at. I think the easiest level is adventurer, where it's just like the story is the most important thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm like one step up from that. So I'm fighting this guy over and over again and I keep dying. And I was finally like, okay, I'm going to use my highest spell slot. I'm going to cast polymorph. And when you hover over him to see the percentage chance of it being effective, it was only like 13% chance because his saving throw was going to be so high. And I cast polymorph. It succeeded. I turned him into a sheep and I had a few rounds where I was able to kill all of his minions without him destroying me with high level spells. And I had 2 rounds where he was still a sheep to heal up my party, have them all gather around the sheep. And the moment he turned back, we just slaughtered him with all of the different characters. But I was sitting there and I was like, that is the most D&D thing that has happened to me
Hmm.
in the game. Do you have any similar experiences?
Well, I'd say so. One of the reasons that I picked Paladin was because I kind of knew the story would involve a lot of the traditional enemies of Paladins. So I would be well positioned to be a damage dealer. And so that manifested itself in the climactic, in the final confrontation of Act Two with
Mm-hmm.
one of the big bads who kind of goes through a transformation and becomes more powerful, where just through a combination of divine smite and various weapons that I'd accumulated, I beat him so quickly that I had gotten one of those like Steam achievements where
Mm.
it's like, kill this character before XYZ can even happen. Like there were mechanics to that fight that I avoided because I had done all of the, like, I'd gotten my level to the
You were
high enough
OP.
point. I was OP, yeah. And like there were certain weapons that I'd accumulated that were particularly designed for, fighting those enemies. So there was that aspect of it. I'll say you're describing going like doing fights multiple times. This is one of the things I really like about Baldur's Gate 3 is all the different ways to get tactical with the
Mm.
not just your spells and your abilities, different weapons, but just the environment and the interactions. Like there's one fight in the Underdark section where there's lava to one side and you can get there's significant elevation and you can just do all sorts of stuff with moving people into the lava and throwing stuff down and getting advantage from being up on high and summoning people and throwing things. It's like that is what makes even every fight can go slightly differently and you can play two-dimensionally with just your abilities and just your spells, but there's so many enjoyable things that just kind of happen when you start becoming a little bit more creative with the fights. And that's one thing I really like that other games are not or were nowhere near that level of multifaceted combat. It was very much straightforward, like hack and slash, right? And this is one area where I really like the flexibility.
And the interactions with your followers.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling you, who's the wizard? What's the name of the wizard that you?
Gale.
Gale. That's right,
Yeah.
Gale. So I was telling you the first time I played through my first playthrough, and I'm going to spoil this because it's super early in the game, and I just happened to miss it. So if you've played Baldur's Gate, you'll find this to be funny, I hope. At the very beginning of the game, once you begin, you get off the Nautilid, the ship, and you're kind of playing your first walkthrough on the beaches. You come across a waypoint, and the waypoint, they say the game tells you through narration that it's unstable and kind of dangerous. And my first playthrough, a level 1 wizard with like 6 hit points, I was like, fuck that. I'm not touching the dangerous sigil. And I had no idea that's how you discover Gale, which ended up not being a problem because I was already a wizard and I didn't really need a spellcaster in my party because I already filled that role. And I played through, ignored it, and then just kept going. And I didn't come back to that region until I was almost done with Act Two. And I was like, oh shit, there's a couple things in the first map that I didn't discover, or I had a couple like objectives that I needed to go through and just finish up. So I went back through and then I came across it again and I was like, okay, I'm really high level, whatever this sigil is. If it does damage, I'm good now. And then that's when I discovered Gale. So I went throughout like probably 2/3 of the game, or at least the first 2 acts, and hadn't even discovered this follower. So it's just so.
Now, and he joined your camp though, and you have him now as a companion?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. So in my playthrough, I pulled Gale out of the waypoint, and then he has his backstory of he needs to consume magic items.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to give him any magic items, and he got pissed at me and left. So like
Oh, really?
I rescued him, and then he just left after I think I barely used him too. It was very early on that he left. So I have not had a straight arcane spellcaster in my entire playthrough because obviously I went paladin for
And he pieced out.
the main, and then he left. So like, and we've been fine. Like we've been getting through it. And that's the other fun thing is now there are all these challenges with playing Baldur's Gate. Like, oh, can you do it on your own? And like, yeah, maybe you'll encounter the companions, but you don't have to take them with you in your party when you leave camp. You can just do it on your own. And there are people who I think it's easier for certain classes and certain subclasses of like, I think necromancer wizards are one where you can just raise a bunch of the dead after a while, and
You have
that's
a little army.
your party. Yeah, that's your army of the dead.
Did you see the story of the guy who polymorphed into a cat and played the entire game as a cat?
No.
Yeah.
Because did he have he had all his abilities just in cat form?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he was a druid. He was either a druid who shapeshifted into a cat.
Okay, there you go.
Wizard that would polymorph into a cat. But there's an article that somebody wrote that was like, here's the insights of the person that played the whole game as a cat. Then, I don't know. It's just, but you can do that. To me, that's D&D. Like,
do you have any sort of like, was it communicate with animals or speak with animals? Do you have that?
Yeah, it was a magic item that I wore that was like, you could speak with animals once a day or something like that. But
okay.
Yeah, every once in a while you talk to cats or a bird that's kind of just floating around.
That's what as I was a Oath of the Ancients paladin, and you get speak with animals as a, once a day you can cast it for free basically. And it doesn't take up, it's not an item slot, it's just an ability. And so I would talk with every single animal. And it's so much fun how there are certain things in the game where that you were rewarded for that. There are little hidden items that you can find, or experience points that you can gain, or fights that you can avoid, whatever else. And there's a lot of things there which is a ton of fun to
there's one, I don't know if you came across this, but in Act 1 I talked to a blue jay.
Oh yeah, the blue jay. Yeah.
The blue jay was like, hey, these eagles took over my nest or something. Can you defeat them for me? And I was like, yeah, I'll go fuck up some eagles. But it's like 2 giant eagles.
Oh yeah, no, I remember that fight.
It's like, man. But I know, I just felt good. And then afterwards, after you kill the eagles, the blue jay just shows up and is like grateful and then gives you some stuff. But
yeah,
it's just cool. And then in Act 3, I talked to some rats that were in the basement of a building that I was tasked with killing all the rats. And it just, yeah.
Well, because in Act 2, there's a bunch of rats, but they're more than rats, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was actually one I knew just from osmosis that there was more to those rats than meets the eye. But for whatever reason, maybe I was feeling a little bit more urgency. I didn't engage with them in order to like fulfill that storyline. I'll say too that it's a really hard game to go through as a completist, and that is my, generally speaking, my play style. Like I want to discover all the spaces on the map. I want to clear everything, encounter everything, like do all the side quests.
But
It's real.
that's the thing though, is that you can't though unless you have multiple playthroughs.
I know that's
Yeah.
one of the challenges. Is like, damn it, like and like every time there are so many different forks, right? That
Yeah.
you just it is I
It's
mean, it's
either
really
this or that. Yeah.
it's fantastic design from a business perspective of let's keep people engaged with this game. I think I saw a headline just last week maybe that we're now 9 months post release or something, maybe
It was
not,
October, I think.
maybe more like 6 months, but generally speaking, people play, they're like, games get
Well,
really
different.
popular and
So
then they,
I'm Xbox, so I didn't get it until late.
yeah, I think it was out
So
on,
it's probably pushing.
I think it was only early September. It's only been about 6 months, I think, since
It
the
was
PC
released on
release.
like PC and PlayStation.
I think,
It was, I don't know, it was months later for Xbox people. So
maybe I'm wrong.
let me see. You keep talking. I'll look it up.
Well, so the thing is, the first of all, it was wildly more popular than than initially expected, and a lot of that was like, oh shit, we need to add more servers, we need to add more capacity here, and then they had a lot of hot fixes and bugs and things like that, and they were pretty responsive to fixing those because this game was in early access for 3 years or something like that. I mean, quick funny, maybe not funny aside, I remember watching the like one of the early trailers for this. I was like, oh yeah, this will be fun. Like Baldur's Gate, familiar that know the franchise exists, haven't played it, played this other adjacent games and really like those. They had the whole thing with the mind flayers, which mind flayers are a fantastic villain. And then I started I started engaging a little bit on Twitter. This is back when I had my Twitter account, and I was actually getting into a back and forth with somebody who's at Wizards of the Coast, not back and forth with him, but responding to other tweets that people were writing that were like critical of because one of the great aspects of this game is that you can just play completely outside of the turn-based order that D&D combat goes, but you can go into turn-based play at any time if you want to like get really tactical about how you navigate enemies on patrol or certain obstacles, or if you have like a condition that inhibits your like that you're losing health on a regular basis, and not from combat but from some sort of environmental effect. And somebody was like criticizing that. I was like, but they were doing it wrong and they were talking about it poorly. And then like somebody from Wizards of the Coast was engaging with what I was saying. I was like, yay, I am a degree of separation from folks at Wizards. And then I deleted my account, so none of it matters. But anyway, what did you find?
I found the game released on Windows, PlayStation 5, and Mac. Well, Windows on August 3rd, PlayStation 5 on September 6th, Mac on September 22nd, and then it released on Xbox early December.
Okay, so you got several months behind, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
I don't know. I just remember I hit a point because when it was released on PlayStation, they were still just like, we don't know when or if it's going to be released on Xbox. We're really trying. We're working with Larian and Microsoft to try to come up with an agreement. And then I hit a point in like November where I was like, shit, I might just buy a PlayStation 5 because I want to play Baldur's Gate 3 so bad that Microsoft might lose me on future consoles or games or things like that. But I don't know, it finally came out and now I'm hooked. But like to me, like our whole conversation, it just feels so D&D for it to be so customizable and the gameplay be so fine-tuned to each player that it's just such a good game. I love it. So, and now that I'm playing my first character, the wizard, I was like the straight man. I was still like, oh, I'm going to do good things. But now that I'm a bard, I'm like romancing everybody. I'm doing good things. I'm doing shitty things. I'm across the board. And my first playthrough, and I'll just say mind flayers are pivotal to the story. And my first playthrough, I really embraced the mind flayer aspect of the game. But in this one, I'm going to avoid it, and I'm just going to see what the difference in gameplay is like. Yeah.
So true to my interpretation of the Paladin Oath of the Ancients, I have not engaged with the mind flayer powers at all. So I've got all these parasites that I haven't consumed. I've got, that entire aspect of gameplay that I just haven't done. I haven't dipped into at all. My
It's
second,
pretty cool.
I know, and I know that there are fun things about the game that you only get if you are the Dark Urge, which my second character, I picked that backstory. I haven't played that character a whole lot though. Just the other thing is, again, I'm a completist, and there's so much time that you could put into the game. It's kind of, I've got some other commitments. In fact, they're running around upstairs right now, which it's hard to pour as many hours into a game, multiple playthroughs as one would like. But Baldur's Gate was definitely
heard it here first. Don't have kids, and
yeah.
you can keep living your
basement
dwelling video game lifestyle.
I, Haley listens to this podcast, at least some of them, so I won't get into too much detail here, but I think it is a true thing, and I've talked to some other friends about this, where there's just something about playing video games that wives, girlfriends, partners, they just don't necessarily get it, right? Like it's different than other hobbies to a certain extent.
But with this though, with Baldur's Gate 3, I had Carly create a character, and she had a pretty good time.
That's good.
With like all of the different customizable aspects of creating a character for the game. So I don't know.
I tried to make my, is it your guard? What do they call the character that
your other guardian?
The guardian. I made my guardian look like Haley, and I tried to show her that, and then I haven't told her where that goes.
Take a picture and show it to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to see what your rendition of Carly looks, or of Haley looks like. Yeah. But I really went with the fantasy aspect of creating my characters, and I never made one that looks like me. So maybe I should.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll show you.
I don't know what class I would be. I'd probably be like a barbarian. I'm not a fighter. If anything, I'd probably be a druid, honestly.
You got Noodle. Noodle's your animal companion.
Yep.
I'll send you a picture of Sam the Paladin and Haley the Guardian. All right.
Well, for our listeners, we will post our pictures of our characters, our Baldur's Gate 3 characters, on the Facebook page and on the Facebook group on both locations.
And if you want to compare them to what we look like in real life, you can go to YouTube and watch our most recent episodes, which are video episodes.
And this gives me another reason to keep playing Baldur's Gate 3, because I can do it for the podcast. This is the best thing about.
It's for the podcast, honey.
It's for the Carly. I have to play this game. Yeah. It's for the podcast.
That really only became a problem when we were watching some of those Ralph Bakshi movies. I was like, yes, it's for the podcast, baby. You're doing this too.
Oh God, it's for the that's when you have to go. I'm reminding myself this is for the podcast.
Yeah, this is for the podcast. Speaking of that, anything else? First of all, anything else you want to say on Baldur's Gate 3? I mean, we're not going to get into spoilers. The story is great. There's a ton of really fun lore stuff, especially with the Githyanki and the Githzerai and the Mind Flayers, which is fun because it's kind of cosmic, and you could easily pull that into your own D&D campaign if you had one. Actually, so anything else to say on Baldur's Gate 3?
Just that if you are a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, and if you're not a fan of Dungeons and Dragons and you just love fantasy games, this is honest to God, or gods, honest to the gods. I'm trying to determine where it sits in regards to Skyrim, because for me, Skyrim is always going to be like my number one fantasy game. But I think it might be like a 1A, 1B situation for me now, because Baldur's Gate 3 is peak fantasy video game, RPG video game, I think. And Skyrim is super customizable. Like, I've played through that a shit ton of times with different types of characters. But I think the thing where Baldur's Gate kind of surpasses Skyrim is that no matter how you play Skyrim, the story is going to be the same. The story doesn't change. The fighting changes and how you approach the game changes, but it's the story is what it is. And with Baldur's Gate 3, I've playing through it in a different way, making different choices, and it feels like a different game. The consequences of my actions change based on how I play. So I think I will officially say today.
Oh, here we go.
I think I've said this in my head, but I've never verbalized it. Baldur's Gate 3 might be my favorite game now.
Wow.
And Skyrim is now my 1B. Skyrim is still installed on my Xbox Series X, and it will never be uninstalled. It will always be there for me. I don't know, man. Baldur's Gate 3. It's the shit.
It is. It is. And you haven't even finished it yet, right? Because you said you're still.
I don't even know how it ends yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's our relatively brief discussion of Baldur's Gate 3. I guess I had another question, but can't remember what it was now.
That's okay.
But I think we can also probably start wrapping up. So just looking ahead, we are still waiting on announcements regarding the next season of Critical Role Legends of Vox Machina, season 2 premiere date for Rings of Power. It seems like we're still moving forward. Probably won't have anything until late summer, early fall.
We've still got some exciting stuff in the pipeline that we can't talk about yet, but cool things coming. And fantasy material is alive and well. I will say that this is like one of those where I'm just excited, man. Like between Baldur's Gate 3, things we've got on the horizon. Dune 2 came out. The original Star Wars Battlefronts are being re-released for
that original Battlefront game is so good.
What a time to be alive.
Yeah. I should say, well, real quick on Video Games Plus partners, Haley did ask that I purchase for her Hogwarts Legacy for the Switch.
Good game.
Which I have not done yet, but I will do that soon. Spoiler alerts, babe.
Yeah, we can talk about. Have you played Hogwarts Legacy?
No.
Okay, well, you should, so then we can talk about it on this. But I'll say I played through it and didn't choose to learn the unforgivable curses. So I got to replay that one and be a bad guy. But great game.
Was your name Sean the Wizard?
No, what did I pick? It started with an H. I haven't played Hogwarts Legacy in a really, really long time. It's a great game. The open world aspects of Hogwarts Legacy, you can explore a huge region. So highly recommend. It's a fun game.
Cool. All right. Well, I think
we've done enough. J.K. Rowling, but the game's great.
I think we've done enough to earn our paychecks from Larry and Wizards of the Coast and Warner Brothers. So
Hasbro.
So we can sign off there. Thank you, everybody, for continuing to listen, like, share, subscribe this podcast. As you know, we've put out a couple of we are on YouTube. We've put out a couple of actual video episodes instead of just having our logo as the screensaver. So you want to see what we look like in the flesh, talking about mead making in one episode and talking about our various adventures in the kitchen with fantasy cookbooks. That is our other video episode. So you can catch us on YouTube and watch the space for some exciting updates in the coming weeks. Sean, anything else to sign us off?
Just a mead update.
Oh, yes.
We're a week into fermentation, and we're starting to slow down to a bubble every 30 seconds or so.
Okay.
So if you saw the video I posted, it was a pretty rapid fermentation, and now we're starting to slow down. So in about another week, we'll transfer into secondary, and I will hopefully document that process.
All right. Well, to follow that process, go find us on find us on Facebook, Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. We also have the Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things podcast community page. There are updates there as well. And other than that, we will see you when we see you. Bye, everybody.
Au revoir.